Crowded amongst journalists, translators, and Soviet workmen, two of the most powerful men in the world stood debating communism versus capitalism in 1959 as cameras shuddered to click photograph after photograph, etching this moment in history. These two men were then US Vice President Richard Nixon and Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev. They were standing in the half-completed American National Exhibition in Sokolniki Park, Moscow. However, shortly after opening speech by Nixon, something unusual happened. The men started debating. The impromptu debate between these two well-seasoned politicians in 1959 is now famously called the kitchen debate. Although the debate might have been impromptu, the set was not. Carefully created due to the Lacy-Zarubin Agreement, which called for greater cultural exchanges between the superpowers, the American National Exhibition in Moscow was part of a new domestic frontier in the Cold War to retaliate against Soviet advances in the space and arms race. The kitchen debate, the pinnacle of the exhibition, pioneered a defining aspect of Cold War consumer politics and soft power, where the United States used the display of technological advances as a means of American nationalism and dominance. But to know how they found themselves at this juncture, let's rewind. When Eisenhower was elected president in 1952, he inherited a country in the midst of the Cold War. Eisenhower developed a strategy of psychological warfare, opening a new frontier to attack the Soviet Union in the Cold War. He started a war of ideas, a cultural battle, with the goal of showing the world's citizens the benefits of democracy and capitalism. This soon led to the creation of the United States Information Agency. And USIA found the perfect moment to convey US dominance when Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev called for greater cultural and intellectual exchanges in a televised interview on Face the Nation on June 2nd, 1957.
We, for our part, are trying to do all we can to bring about a normal state of things and to bring about peaceful coexistence between countries with different systems, that is to say, between capitalist countries and socialist.
Soon after, on October 5th, 1957, Sputnik became the first man-made satellite to orbit the Earth, terrifying Americans of Soviet scientific capabilities and kicking off what we today know as the space race. This propelled Eisenhower to work with Khrushchev, and soon enough, on October 28th, talks of an agreement for greater cultural engagement began. Thus, in 1958, the Lacy-Zarubin Agreement was signed by leaders of both countries, whose Section 8 was titled Exchange of Exhibits and Publications. Under this section, both countries were required to have exhibits for developing mutual understanding between the peoples of the Soviet Union and the United States. Hence, in July 1959, President Nixon went to the Soviet Union to ceremonially open the American National Exhibition held in Moscow's Sokolniki Park, which was carefully created to express American wealth. While it was free of overt propaganda, implicit messaging was ingrained into the exhibition. The goal was to illustrate domestic American advances, especially the comfort of day-to-day luxuries and ease of American housewives. New York Times described Nixon's contributions this way. In the best sense of the word, he is going to Moscow as a salesman not of commodities or even of a particular ideology, but rather of the truth about our country. Despite Soviet efforts to tamp down the popularity of the exhibition's aim to show the many luxuries of the American way of life was certainly successful, attracting over 3 million people in its 6-week span.
We had humongous crowds. There were just so many people coming to see this because the Soviet Union had been very closed, and this was like the first time The Russians had a chance to walk through and see what an American car looked like, and they loved that. What a house, an American house, small house would look like. And when they came to see us, they couldn't believe that we had all the things that we had, because we had the same things for years.
Yet, some Soviet citizens, including Khrushchev, remained skeptical about the availability and affordability of these gadgets by the masses. Marietta Shcheginian, a famous Russian writer, wrote about her experience visiting the exhibition in the state-controlled and heavily censored newspaper Izvestia. She wrote, "But the organizers of the exhibition naively think that our Soviet viewer will be consumed by a thirst for ownership of such private property." Some people were even coached by the Soviet government to question the exhibition and criticize it. One comment said, "This does not impress me." Yet the majority of the Soviet public was dazzled by the devices and gadgets that the exhibition flaunted. A Soviet electrician wrote, "The American exhibition convincingly shows that private enterprise produces more and in stupendous quantities the very best goods in the world." In addition to the Soviet public, Soviet leader Khrushchev also viewed the exhibition, oftentimes hiding his surprise while criticizing America, eventually leading to the famous kitchen debate between him and Nixon. The debate continued as Nixon and Khrushchev discussed many topics, including communism versus capitalism, with Nixon even challenging Khrushchev to open his mind and his country from censorship.
You must not be afraid of ideas.
Nixon eventually steered the topic of competition from weapons to consumer products. He asked, "Would it not be better to compete in the relative merit of washing machines than in the strength of rockets?" "Yes, but your generals say we must compete in rockets," responded Soviet leader Khrushchev. "We are strong and we can beat you." Through consumer culture and domestic advances, Nixon wanted to redirect the conversation to an American strength, whereas Khrushchev wanted to emphasize Soviet military strength. Nixon used washing machines to demonstrate U.S. advantage in the capitalist system while replacing military and nuclear power from competition. The debate ended on an inconclusive note. There was no clear winner, but the debate established Nixon's position in global politics while opening a frontier for competition and cultural exchanges between the nations. In the midst of Cold War tensions and fear of nuclear war, the kitchen debate represented a different kind of offense, a cultural offense in the words of Takeshi Matsuda, a professor of American history at the Osaka University in Japan. The US portrayed their dominance through the supposed superiority in consumer politics, opening a new frontier of competition in the Cold War. After using hard power during World War II, the US instead resorted to soft power. For the US and society leaders, the American kitchens in Moscow and the consumer abundance served as one of the most important battlegrounds in the Cold War. The two superpowers instead waged war in the realm of consumer expectations and desires. The kitchen debate offered the perfect opportunity to depict material proof of the dominance of capitalism over socialism publicly. 64 years after, cultural offenses haven't disappeared. Instead, they have become even more prevalent than ever. They aren't limited to just superpower nations either. The kitchen debate was vital in laying the groundwork for a different form of political offenses, ones that invade our homes through Korean beauty products or Japanese manga. We live in an extensively globalized world where we are bombarded with influence from other countries in all sorts of ways. Kitchen debate opened the frontier for soft power, where countries used attraction instead of coercion to achieve a motive. Afterwards, US along with other countries started funding more efforts for soft power, and we see this cross-cultural exchange in the Chinese pandas in the National Zoo to the cherry blossoms gifted from Japan. Hollywood stands as a prime example for United States' efforts to expand its influence in the world through movies and TV shows. It acts as an alternative for war and military response. As we move forward and consume such soft power, we must critically look at these influences from other countries, considering their motives. Not only must we examine the influences, but remember that soft power is a powerful weapon to yield, and we must remember the consequences of our actions.